Okay, so we're about to talk about 2 or 3 health strategies that I think could be really, really valuable for most of you. Now, you know my story. I teach soil health, plant health, animal health, human health, and of course I talk about the impact upon planetary health. And there's real interest in some of these strategies to help you live a happier, longer, less stressed life. And basically we're going to begin by talking about the liver. Now, it's really important. I mean, most of us think of, when we think about the largest killer, of course, which is coronary heart disease, we think of our heart as the single most important organ, and it's not, interestingly. It's the second most important. It's hard to put importance on anything, but it is. The primary, most important organ in your body is your liver, and liver health is a huge issue. I mean, that's clear when we look at Sandra Cabot's book, for example, The Liver Cleansing Diet, which has been over 2 million copies, or 2 or 3 million copies sold now, been republished multiple times. And basically that Liver Cleansing Diet book, it's about word of mouth. People said, I tried that and it worked. I felt better. And it's gone on to become sort of an iconic book in the health genre in Australia. A recent study that I came across confirmed that 1 in 14 of us, that's not small numbers, but 1 in 14 of us suffer from varying stages of something called liver fibrosis. And that's not detectable in its early stages. So what is liver fibrosis? It's the buildup of scar tissue related to maybe alcohol, maybe hepatitis, maybe this thing called fatty liver disease, maybe prescription drugs and autoimmune conditions, but probably most importantly, environmental contaminants. And when we talk environmental contaminants, we're talking about 74,000 registered chemicals, and God knows how many unregistered chemicals in this weird, crazy, toxic world that we've created. And the end result of this fibrosis story that we're talking about, the end result can involve things like cirrhosis or strokes. There's a whole range of strokes that are directly associated with liver, which is also related to liver-based high blood pressure. So we're going to talk about how simple things that can help you look after your liver a little better. And I call it learning to love your liver. So the first and perhaps the biggest players are sulfur compounds. They're so important. And these include things like, we're going to talk about all of them, so it's going to be quite a complex session. These are things like glutathione, alpha-lipoic acid, sulphurafane, garlic-derived sulfur compounds, might be something like MSM, taurine, and sulfur-containing histidines. And we're going to go through those. We're going to begin by talking about glutathione, which is probably the most important single nutrient for liver health, and it basically involves 3 amino acids, cysteine, glutamine, and glycine. And of course, cysteine is sulfur-based. Now, you can get it from certain foods, but it's really essential that our liver is functioning to produce an ongoing supply of this really, really important antioxidant. In fact, mice that were genetically engineered to prevent glutathione production in their liver, those mice died 1 month after birth. So it's a hugely important thing that our liver is producing glutathione. So what tools can we use? This is important stuff. What tools can we use to help and assist our liver more efficiently produce this all-important substance called glutathione? Well, number one is vitamin C supplementation. Of course, vitamin C is the workhorse of our antioxidant system. And basically, if you've got plenty of it, then it can spare glutathione, because glutathione is used also to quell free radical fires. And if you've got plenty of vitamin C doing that work, then you reduce the need for glutathione to do similar work. So what's the deal with vitamin C? Well, basically, whatever you choose, it needs to have, really importantly, it must have these things called bioflavonoids, because they don't work very well. We have a very good product, vitamin C product in the human health range that has the right percentage of bioflavonoids in it. But there's also a thing called liposomal vitamin C, which I'll look at scoring for our range at some point. And liposomal vitamin C is only slightly less effective than actual injections or intravenous vitamin C. So it's a really good way to supply vitamin C at good levels. Remember, we don't make vitamin C. We've got to supply it. And, you know, as Linus Pauling said, you can peel oranges till your wrist sees, and you won't get enough vitamin C in the toxic world that we live in, because we don't make it, we've got to get it from food. And as I mentioned, when I met with the UK minister, he cited a study where they tested oranges in the UK and found 20% with zero vitamin C. So, you know, we're not producing, our soils are a shadow of what they used to be, and some of our food is not what it used to be as a result. And so, you know, supplementation with vitamin C, I consider personally, when I travel and there's lots of free radical damage involved in flying constantly, I consider vitamin C to be an essential. So that's number one, but it's really important for your liver. Remember, because you're sparing glutathione when you've got plenty of vitamin C. Number two, it used to be called poor man's glutathione, and now the tides have turned, because you can buy quite expensive glutathione supplements, and it turns out that this so-called poor man's glutathione may well be more effective. And we're talking about something called whey protein concentrate. So basically it consists of very high levels of those 3 amino acids that we mentioned that make up glutathione. And basically what's been found is that it's much less expensive than glutathione supplements, but it's much better to keep the body working, to give it the building blocks so it builds glutathione more efficiently when it's got plenty of those amino acids, rather than saying, well, here it is, and the body says, well, I don't need to do that anymore, which can happen with supplementation with glutathione. So it turns out that the poor man's version may well be the rich man's desired result. So number three, so we're talking vitamin C supplementation, we're talking whey protein concentrate, and we're going to talk about a smoothie that will include some of these things very shortly. Turmeric, a proven, amongst its multiple claims to fame, turmeric and, of course, curcumin, the active ingredient, is a proven glutathione enhancer. We mentioned the concept that that basically curcumin needs to be activated with a black pepper, the active component being pepperine, and studies that have confirmed a 2,000% increase in the utilization of curcumin if you include that 9% black pepper. And of course, our product, Curculife, does exactly that. Very, very popular. It's our own turmeric grown here on this farm, and some organic black pepper at 9%. So that can be part of your game plan. So turmeric, wonderful. And milk thistle extract. Now, we haven't got any on hand at the moment because I like to look after my own liver, and I've used up all of my milk thistle extract. But what it contains is a component called silymarin, and it's really, really powerful. One of the most researchers of all liver supporters and cell protectors that has this similar glutathione sparing effect, just like vitamin C. So that's milk thistle extract. You might even have some milk thistles on the farm that could be utilized in this context. Now, when we talk about glutathione, it's really important that it's used by itself, but it also combines with a trace mineral called selenium, which we know is lacking because we're the only ones who test it in Australian soils anyway, and it's lacking in every soil. We're the second lowest levels of selenium on the planet in this country. But why is it important? Because glutathione and selenium bond together and form something called glutathione peroxidase. How much selenium do you need to take on a daily basis? Because it's not in your food and it's not in your soil. 200 micrograms, or one of the highest sources of selenium is, of course, the Brazil nut. And there's nothing really competes with the Brazil nut. So Brazil nut in your smoothie might be a good concept. Other good sources of glutathione, parsley's got good levels, beetroot, avocados, there's quite a few foods, kale, garlic and spring onions, and we're going to build all these into a green smoothie that will be a liver-boosting green smoothie, and we're going to teach you how to do that shortly. What other liver supporters have we got? There's quite a host of them, and one really important thing that I think should be almost in everyone's bathroom cabinet or wherever they keep their wellness tools, and this is something they often call the master antioxidant. And we're talking about something called alpha lipoic acid. Why is it called the master antioxidant? Because the two most important antioxidants are the fat-soluble vitamin E and the water-soluble vitamin C, and they're working constantly trying to quell these free radical fires in your body. But every time vitamin C donates one of its electrons to quell the missing electron, in the free radical, then it's done and dusted, but not if alpha-lipoic acid is present, because alpha-lipoic follows like a tanker filling up your spray tank, and it recharges vitamin C and it recharges vitamin E, and hence its termed the master antioxidant. It's quite an important supplement to keep in your cupboard. It recharges vitamin C and vitamin E, so their productive lives are much longer than they'd otherwise be. There's also been some reported studies, several studies that have shown this anti-fibrotic properties, where ALA, alpha-lipoic acid, has actually been shown to repair scarring on the liver, and it's also been shown to reduce collagen deposition on the liver, which further reduces oxidative stress. So it's a good one, alpha-lipoic acid. Now, we're going to talk about glucosinates found in cruciferous plants, and there's a really powerful one. There's so much research emerging relative to the substance, and we're talking about sulphurafane. It's one of the most powerful of all plant-based antioxidants, and so powerful as an anti-inflammatory. And of course, the big story, and you may have heard or read about this previously, is that sulphurafane can induce death in cancer cells. And it's also been shown to help with the inflammation in the brain linked to Alzheimer's disease. But we're talking liver, and this sulfur-based substance is a really powerful protector against liver fibrosis. Now, where do you get the high source? You can buy packets of it. I like a product called Enduracell. You need to know that you've got the two active components present, or actually, sometimes when you dry back a powder, you actually damage the enzyme myristicine that makes the difference in activating the sulphurafane. And so the high source, if you want a natural source, is sprouts and broccoli. We've got some broccoli seed here, and we didn't have time to sprout it, but that is what we would put ideally into our liver smoothie. Sprout the seeds, there's 2 or 3 days, 4 or 5 days max, and then put those sprouts. And the sprouts are just really, really powerful, a really, really powerful cancer tool. And there's also a new study that has shown that capsicum, which of course comes from chilies, actually synergizes sulphurafane to do it even better, that wonderful job of looking after your liver and all the other beneficial things, including protection from cancer, that really, really good compound can deliver. Now, when we talk about garlic-derived sulfur compounds, of course, the most powerful is that wonderful thing found in garlic, this medical marvel called Alicin. And I need to talk for a moment. We've got a piece of garlic here, and I've got a hectare of garlic currently underway on my second farm at Stanthorpe. We need to talk about garlic and your choice of garlic. Now, please don't buy, even though, I've often wondered, why would you spend $40 a kilo on Australian garlic when you can buy Chinese garlic for $8 a kilo? Why would you spend 5 times more? Literally, you've got to look at the story of the Chinese garlic. There's 4 things that happen to it. Number one, they soak it. They like it white. They don't want to have that purple shades on it. They like it to be snow white. So they soak it in bleach for 2 to 3 hours before drying it and packing it. Well, bleach is, you may not know, but it's a dioxin. It's a class 1 carcinogen. It's not a good thing to soak something in a pure concentrated bleach to turn it white. And then they use something called maleic, not malic, but maleic acid. Now, I just challenge you to Google maleic acid and cancer in rats, and you'll see that there might be an issue. That substance is added so that it doesn't sprout prematurely. And then they do something even worse to ensure that it's not premature sprouting. And what they do is irradiate the garlic, and that kills any potential for it to sprout earlier. So you've got a dead piece of garlic. But more importantly, that hugely powerful medicinal compound called Alicin, actually it's the secret when you want to take garlic medicinally, is that you take 2 cloves and you bang them, you bruise them as it's called, and you oxidize. Oxygen gets into where you've bruised them, and that activates, remember, all enzymes have got an ase on the end, so we've got something called alanase, and we've got another substance in there called Alicin. And alanase, the enzyme, and Alicin, the phytochemical, combine with oxygen, and it takes 11 minutes, and now you've formed Alicin. And that's the secret of supplementing. You bang it, you leave it 11 minutes, and you swallow the 2 cloves, and that's the medicinal rate. And it's seriously good medicine. If we look, fascinatingly, during the Great Plague, where it was pretty hard to find the people that walked with the barrows and said, "Bring out your dead," because they lived about 2 days before they caught that horrific plague. But then there was a group who became quite rich for their time, getting their £1 a day or doubled up, and they got £2 or £3 a day, that didn't die, and no one knew their secret. And they walked through screaming, "Bring out your dead," for months, and made a small fortune for their times and their position in life at that in that feudal world. And eventually it was discovered that their simple secret was that they put a clove of garlic in each sock, and as they, with the 2,000 pores underneath each feet, they sucked up the bruised combination of LEAs and LEN, sucked up the Alicin via their feet, and that was their secret to give them that protection. Now, that's a pretty good little tip that might be worth thinking about. So Alicin, many, many protective benefits, including good research that it lowers blood pressure. So there's another thing, that if you decompose Alicin, this wonderful compound, through a process called aging, you've probably all heard of the product Kyolic, then it breaks down into a whole suite of remarkable compounds called DAPs. And one of these is called Sax, and Sax is only found in aged garlic. So this is why Kyolic has become this global thing for many, many years, because Sax have got huge antifibrotic capacity. In fact, they are one of the very best of liver health supplements. So let's look at our little recipe, and what we're going to do is we're going to blend it, and we're going to drink it, hopefully, and we're going to make ourselves, it's called Graeme's Liver Love Smoothie.